And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news, and this guy is here this morning. He joins us right about this time every year. We talk about a couple of things that come up right about the same time as school starting, summer ends, that sort of thing. But I'm going to let him take a second to introduce himself. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm Jeff Taylor, Livingston Parish Assessor, and thank you so much for having me here.
Absolutely. And so a couple of things we're going to talk about today. We're going to get into assess the need. Of course, as school starts, that wraps up. We're also going to be talking about some of the business you have going on in your office. And also, we're recording this on a Thursday morning, and Board of Review is tonight, which, if you don't know what that is, it's where Mr. Taylor here goes to the Parish Council and presents the results of this year's assessment. So we'll talk about all that in a minute. First, I want to start with your Assess the Need program. Hugely successful program, but y'all made some changes this year. So first, I want to talk to you about, always like to hear from you what that program means to you. Clever name, of course, goes right along with what your job is. And then we'll talk about some of the changes you made this year.
Okay. Well, of course, the name, we always tell you what it is, but some people have never heard it. The name simply came from being in the assessor's office, and my wife, we was trying to come up with a program that we thought would meet the need for everybody in the parish. We actually had one of our friends that was talking about it, and all the kids show up and they get Christmas, but they don't have the school supplies. And so we just kept on going by this. The need is tremendous. The need is this, the need. And she said, I think we ought to name it Assess the Need.
Sure.
And so at that point, it took off. It just stuck, and it's been a good name. The program this year was phenomenal. It just took off for us. Crystal Watts was our director for many, many years, and she retired, but she set such a good ground base for us that we were able to just bring in Bobby Joe Gearan, and she did a phenomenal job this year. So the two of them still work together very closely on it this year. Krista took her under her wing and trained her the way that we do our business. And then Bobby Joe just took off from there. And so one of our big changes that we made this year is we left the Walmart stores because they had decided that they weren't going to let anybody stand out in front of the store. Bunch of different things, whatever happened, we don't know. But we decided that it may be a good thing. Sometimes the nest has got to get a little rough before you'll make a move. So what we did is we went and contacted a bunch of the stores for Associated Grocers, all 6 quarters, Village Market down in Port Vincent, and then Oak Point up in Watson. And they all jumped on and said, yeah, we would love to do it. And so we had our volunteers stand out in front of each one of those stores, all 8 of them, for 2 weekends. And we had the best one weekend we ever had on a 2-weekend schedule. So we raised a good bit of money standing out front of them. So, and I think what happened, McHugh, is this, just like anything else, in Livingston Parish, you're very community oriented. So if you've got your people, your teachers and everything, and they're at the Albany quarters, it's going to work a lot better than the Albany teachers coming out to Watson Walmart, because people don't know them. When you go to walk in that store, you all of a sudden you see your first, second, third grade teacher, or your high school football coach, or the cheerleaders, or the band, or the football players, baseball players. They're out there in their uniforms and everything. You're going to be more likely to give because you know them. And so we found that that was a phenomenal turn for us this year, and we'll stick with that game plan.
Sure. And, one would imagine, and I'm sure you can confirm this, that as you sort of localize these collections, it's a lot easier to get volunteers.
It was a lot easier to get them because they're not driving all over the parish to work 1 or 2 hours. We had teachers from Marpaw and from every school. Every school showed up that had a store, but they would go work at a certain area. Marpaw would work in the Springfield store. Springfield would work in Springfield. Albany was at Albany. And then Holden went out to Albany. And then Doyle went to the Livingston store. So they all were local. And Denham Springs had all their schools that went to the 2 quarters, and then Watson went over. It was phenomenal. I had to watch them. When you would drive by there and you would see all the volunteers, we kept getting videos and everything sent to us. The cheerleaders would be out in front of the store doing cheers about Assess the Need that they had made up and everything. That just brings excitement, and
Sure.
it brought excitement, and it brought excitement in the form of donations. And again, that was the best we've ever had in donations.
Right, and as you said, it turned it a little more local.
Yes. Yes.
So, rough estimate on the number of kids served this year?
About 3,000.
Wow.
That's coming from the school board. They're telling us about 3,000 kids that we serviced this year.
And that's roughly 15% of the student body.
It's a good many. I don't even know exactly how many students we have in the deal. I just know that 3,000 was a lot. When we first started, they told us about 10%, and
Yeah.
it was about 1,400 kids. And I remember thinking, the whole story was we thought it was going to be like 200 kids, and it was going to cost us $20 a piece. And how in the world are we going to raise $4,000? Let's see if we can get this done. Go to the school board meeting. We get to talking to them, and they said about 10% of the kids are in this situation. So I asked, I said, well, how many students do we have in the school system? They said 14,000. I said, okay, so we're going to, and I stopped. I still remember pausing because it was like somebody slapped me. And I was like, that's 1,400 kids. And they was like, yeah. And I said, I was thinking it was going to be 400 kids. And you could tell in that whole thing, the people in the audience, it was like, it hit you like a ton. And so I called my mom. I said, I don't know how in the world we're going to make this happen. They said, we're always going to make it happen because he owns a cattle of 1,000 hills. My dad closed his church down for 2 weeks, and people come in there and helped us stuff bags. We stood in front of Walmart. We had people that supported us financially, and we were able to raise $28,000 that first year. We paid for everything that they asked, and we've never been short one time. Even though every now and then I still have to call her and go, I don't know if we're going to make it. We were really concerned this year about Walmart has such a large volume. And you were like, okay, how are we going to do it? But if you're constantly having to deal with situations on it, it doesn't make it worth it. So when we went out there, and these business owners were more than excited to bring us in and to get us to come in, and it just made the whole atmosphere so much better for us to go with the local. And I love supporting our locals anyway, and this just gave us a chance to really get out there and promote them.
And as you said, minus and not all the way antagonistic relationship with your host, but not necessarily on the same page.
Not on the same page. You had a situation to where it was always something. Some people have a good relationship. When you got a situation to where we can't stand out in front of the store, but you're bringing in people from out of Parish to sell peanut brittle, I have a little issue with that because we're spending our money local. Every dime that we ever raised went straight back into Walmart.
Right.
And to be any kind of antagonistic, when you're talking about $20, $30, $40,000 a year going there, it just didn't need to be. And so, like I said, sometimes the nest has to get a little rough. But when it did, we jumped at it and we realized, oh, this was a God thing because we would have never made the move.
Right.
We'd have never made it because of the volume. And all of a sudden, when you've got the managers of all these stores coming out there and thanking you for coming to their store and bringing this thing that they can actually feel like they're part of Assess the Need. Those 8 stores are a part of Assess the Need from now on.
Right. And it's interesting what you said when you first heard that 14,000 number. That has since doubled.
Yes.
There's roughly 28,000
okay.
kids in the system. So, but the reason I bring that up is it's impressive because your program has grown and kept up with that demand. And as you said, still roughly about 1 in 9 students. I did some off math in my head. We'll see if it's accurate.
Well, but you're right. When you're talking about that group of kids, that's a lot of kids. So we've had to get creative. In October the 20th, we're having our chef showcase. It's the big deal that we have where we bring in 15, 16 restaurants in and we sell tables. This year it's going to be at Walker High School. And Mr. St. Pierre has offered his school, and then there are students that are into the entertainment deal with the restaurants and everything like that. They're going to help us with the serving and everything, so they're going to be a part of it. And so we're going to do that October the 20th. So all of this money that we're raising helps us pay for this program that has just grown. Again, it just grown so much that it costs so much to do.
Well, and we thank you for continuing to run the program. I know I was around it early on, and then I went off to college and did my thing. But I got to come back and see that it had grown. And met the needs of the parish. So thank you for that.
22 years, McHugh. We've been 22 years, and when it hit 12 years, I told people, I said, do you realize that some of those kids that was in the first grade are now graduating high school? And then you went to 16 years, and you say some of those kids that was in the first grade are graduating college. Now, some of those kids that was in the first grade are parents sending their kids to first grade.
Right.
It's amazing that the program has the longevity of it and everything. And a lot of that credit goes to the people that helped work the program. First of all, my employees that volunteer their time. But we've had several directors that have come in. My very first one was Julie Albin from out in Livingston. She was a teacher, and the most recent ones were Krista Watts and Bobby Joe Guerin. And let me tell you, they have been phenomenal. And all my employees have been really good too, and all the volunteers. I mean, when you're talking about the schools, the teachers that are showing up and everything, look, teachers have a hard job. They've got a hard job, and they do their job and they do everything that they need to be. But we had bus drivers out there. We had coaches. We had principals. We had administrators. We our actual administrators from the school board, assistant superintendents came in. School board members come out and stood this year. It was absolutely phenomenal. It was great.
And it's a very popular program, gets a
Yeah.
lot of participation.
Yes.
So, moving into the business segment of
Okay.
this, let's start with border review. I know that you're probably not going to give us any numbers right now because you have to go present them this
Right.
evening. But give us an idea of what that is. What is that process?
Well, the board review, we do our work all year long, okay, and we go through all of our assessments. We add all the stuff that's new. We look at and make sure that there's nothing that we're missing off the rolls, because for so many years there was so much missing off the rolls. I don't really think the public has an idea of how much was missing when we first came into the office. One of the things that we decided to do was that for us to be able to do a real true reassessment, we was going to have measurements on these properties. Either we were going to have to bring in the plans, or we was going to have to put a tape measure on them. Because a lot of the parishes, a lot of our surrounding parishes, they do reassessment based off the best information they have available. Well, if somebody come in and told you they had a 1,200 square foot house and they really got an 1,800 square foot house, the person that really does have the 1,800 square foot house is always going to pay more because the wrong square footage. So you have to have that is your most basic thing you have to have. So we decided, and we're down to less than 300 structures in this parish that have not had a tape or a blueprint for them. We've done that through flyovers. We have done that through our mapping. We have done it through my guys being on the road. They drive every day. They're looking for properties. They pull the permit systems in Dental Springs and Walker and Killian and Livingston. Everywhere that has a permit, they pull them. They pull them for parish-wide through the parish. So anything that's added to a house, we know about it. Okay, and we're not out there to get anybody. People always misconstrue what the assessor's job is. My job is to assess the property. It's not to put your taxes on it or anything. I assess your property. But if I'm going to do my job right, I have to do a situation to where we do all of this, so when other people, they can feel that they're fair on their tax. That's all people ever ask me to do. So if I've got $100 a square foot, and you told me your 1,800 square foot house was 1,200, your assessment's 120,000 instead of 180,000. So you can see why when these parishes that are around, they start talking about how we did a reassessment. No, you really didn't. You took that information, so you still got bad information in there. You don't buy a new suit and wear old shoes. When we bought our computer program back in 2008 with software and services, we decided that we was going to make sure that the information that we was putting into it was going to be accurate. And it took us a long time. And within the last 4 or 5 years to make sure all this happened, people say, how can it take you so long? We had 60,000 structures. You've got 4 guys out in the field trying to put tape measure on it. You go figure out how long it's going to take you to do it. But it is known throughout the state when you go to any of the other offices, or you go to the association meetings, or even if you go to the IAAO, the international, we have some of the best data in our parish that is around. When I go visit other offices and everything, they don't have near about what we have there, because we made an effort to make sure that was right. It took us a long time. It would have been much easier for me to just go with the status quo. Didn't feel like doing that. So we have now got it to where we're pretty close to being 100% accurate. Again, we just passed our ratio study that came through. And even with the flood, which is unheard of, we passed a ratio study with flying colors.
Explain what a ratio study
A
is.
ratio study comes in and they pull a certain number of properties and they look at them to see if they're within the, every 4 years you do a reassessment. And so they want to see if the reassessment is correct. So they'll pull all these properties. Well, if this house is supposed to be on the roll for $200,000 and I've only got it on for 100, that's well under ratio. We can be at 90% of value all the way to 110% of value, because we do a mass appraisal. We don't do individual houses. So we may do 500 houses in one area. Well, you may have one that may be a little bit lower than the other one because we don't have all the attributes, or they come in and say, we've really got some cracked walls and everything here. Well, we take all that into consideration. So when we pass the ratio, that means that we're between 90 and 100% of value. Okay, and this past year we come in at 90 with the flood and with all the and Ida, the new storm that just came through. It seemed like every time we got through with one, another one hit. Even with all of that, the flooding down in the lower part of the parish every year, even with that, we still come in around 92.5 to 94% on our ratio study, which is phenomenal. Look, it does not happen when you've got all these other parishes that have all the storms and everything that hit. They just take it off and they come in ratios way lower than that. So we were really proud of the fact that we stayed in ratio.
And when you're talking about that ratio, I always like to ask you this question: what was it when you came into office?
When we first come into office, our ratio they were very low. they were to the point of being that the state was going to come in and actually start doing the studies for them. Not studies, but the actual work for them, because it just wasn't anything on. When I first come in, to give you an idea, and the way they would do okay on the ratio is if the property wasn't there, the tax commission at that time had no way to pull it up to see who it was. Because if you remember when I first come in, um, we couldn't even tell who lived in the house unless we knew their first and last name. It didn't come up by a street address. It came up no way. You had to know who lived in that house to be able to pull it up. Well, when we pulled a deal going from Denham Springs to Livingston, and you find that 30% of the properties are not even listed, they're not listed. So at that point, how bad is your ratio really? Because all they were pulling at the time was what was on the roll. So if it wasn't on the roll, that's a zero value. So
Right.
how bad was that going to take it? So I'd say somewhere around 30% at that time. And so we went through and we purged the rolls. We got rid of everything that is no longer in business or no longer in functioning. And we went from $101 million of assessed value the first year I walked in the door. We dropped it to $94 million because of our purge. And now we're over $540 million. So we've increased 400 and something percent in assessed value, but our parish has grown only what 100%
Mm-hmm.
in that time period. So you can tell that things were really bad, and we've gotten a lot of things that's helped, but it's the work of my people at the office, every one of them, everybody that's ever worked for me. We had a standard that said we're going to make it right, and when we leave here, we want to make sure that our kids can say that when my parents were there, they did it right. And I said, that's our mantra. We say it all the time. When we were here, we did it right. When we were here, no matter how tough it gets, no matter how many times people come in that door, when we were here, we did it right.
Right. So I always like to bring up that number of what it was when you came in 2000 and how it's changed since then. And of course, at the Board of Review tonight, you'll discuss what the newest value is of total assessments. You brought up something while you were talking about your work in the office, and that was the flyovers and the mapping and the software that you've done. I want to come back to that because you have opened part of your office to the public to be able to see those maps, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, a few years ago, I think it was 2013, I contracted with a group called GCT out of New Orleans, and we didn't have the money to pay them. So what we did was we worked out a deal that said, okay, we can pay you over 3 to 4 years. And they said, okay. Now the problem with that is it wasn't a financing thing, so I couldn't use it until we paid for it. So other parishes heard about what we were doing, and they had industry in their parish, so they was able to go in there and get the stuff, and they paid for it right then. And all of a sudden, they had these beautiful maps and everything.
Right.
And so, which I still tease them a little bit about it, and I said, we were just a poor parish. If not, we'd have been already up there. But by the time we got it paid for and it came on, they produced us the map. It had some issues with it, any map. Maps are not 100% accurate. It doesn't matter who does them. And so we had some things that we had to keep cleaning up. So over the years, we've been cleaning them up, and through transfers and through just sending my people out and say, okay, you live on this road. Who's all these question marks that are still on here? Who lives here? Go talk to your parents. And so we was able to start tracking things down through the clerk of court's office, and we've got our map is really accurate now. So we recently took the back part of our new office to where we was renting out the space for a while. We've taken that in now as our mapping department. So people can come in, real estate agents, abstractors, adjusters, school board, sheriff's office, all of them can come into our office now, and they can get something printed out for them, a map, or they can just ask questions. You can go online and see our map also, but it's better when you actually have that paper in front of you. So we can print the big maps. We've got the plotters out now that you can print these huge big maps that'll fill up that wall. And so we offer it to the public of Livingston Parish for free. We're not going to charge you for it because we feel like, first of all, you're already paying taxes. So you're paying for my office to be in existence. I'm not going to charge the other entities because they're already working off of taxpayer money. That never made sense to me. There's some of them that do charge you. It never made sense to me. If I'm working off a taxpayer dollar versus a taxpayer dollar, why are you charging me? So we've decided to give it to each one of those free. And the school board has been using it with their routes. They've been using it for their new districts and everything that they come up with. Bonding districts, parish council, when they were doing their trying to come up with the new lines and everything, they use our map. Real estate agents use it all the time. I go to lunch or anywhere like that, and then I'll always have somebody that comes up and say, "Man, we use your map all the time. That map is phenomenal. It's so good. You add so much information to it." So we decided to just open it up to the public and let them come in. And we have a side door that you don't even have to come in the front. You can go to the side, and our little emblem is going on it sometime in the next 2 weeks, and it'll be complete. But it's open now.
Okay, and that is at the new your new annex building, which
Yes.
is in front of all of the parish government buildings there in Livingston on Highway 63, named for your father, correct?
Yes, named for my father, the Delmas L. Taylor Governmental Building, and it's right across, the way we always say it, it's right across the boulevard from the blue building. You can't miss it. When you turn in, you see the big building with the blue roof. We're right across the boulevard.
Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up this afternoon? This
No,
morning?
this year was challenging because we had just got through with all of the flood things. I know the flood was in 2016. People say, well, that was a long time ago. It really wasn't. When you start realizing how much devastation and everything we had, and we gave all the reductions for several years, because one of the things, if you remember, McHugh, some of the other parishes was able to just give a reduction right off the bat, and they, after the first year, they went on about their business. Okay, Ascension, Baton Rouge, all the other ones that were around here. I couldn't do that because I knew with the devastation that we had in this parish, if I gave all the reduction in that first year, our districts were going to go bankrupt. We was not going to have fire departments or recreation. And look, people say, well, recreation. I said, yeah, you say that now. It's in August. But in May, when Joe cannot go play ball, you're asking, why can't he go play ball? They've got all this money. No, they don't have any money because I wasn't able to send out the tax rolls. I took it all off, and so they got no money. So I had to come up with a strategy, and I visited with several of my entities, and I visited with several of my constituents, and I said, I think what's fair here is, since they're giving 100%, or actually Ascension Parish gave 75% off, is what they gave. And so I said, since Ascension's getting 75% off, I think my people deserve the same thing. It's just going to take me longer to get you there. So I'm going to give you 20% off a year for the next 4 years. 20% a year off, that equals 80%. So we're on the equal. Well, we did that, and then we figured the fifth year, we still had several properties. We could not come up with the ones that had been repaired and which ones had not been, because there was still that many after that amount of time. So we went another year and gave it to everybody that had flooded. At that point, we took the flood reduction off, and COVID hit. And so we gave a 10% reduction for COVID, because we were the only assessor in the state to do that. And people asked me why. I said, I have no idea. My job is to make sure that the assessments are fair. Fair and equitable is our job. That's what we have to do. So I don't know what this COVID is going to do to our businesses. I don't know what it's going to do when the businesses start laying people off, and all of a sudden, does that drop market value and everything? I said, so we're going to err on the side of the homeowners and businesses in Livingston Parish. Don't know what anybody else is going to do. This is what I'm doing in Livingston. So we gave the COVID reduction, and so we had that for a couple of years. So that we replaced the flood reduction with the COVID reduction, and then Ida hit. And you're like, you've got to be kidding. So we got to do this again. So we take all the other off and then go add the Ida reduction for that area. And it was a smaller area, so we was able to take care of all of that. And we're going to do that over 2 years. And then reassessment is in 2024. which is going to be good because at that point we can make sure that all the discounts and everything that they had are where they need to be. And if another storm comes through, we'll deal with that.
Yeah. Dealing with it as it comes.
Deal
right?
with them as they come. And, people ask me all the time, they said, are you done? Are you finished and everything? No, there's a lot of things that we're adding every day. I just got back from a conference that just, I'm the nerd guy. I like when I go to conferences and everything, I like to go in and listen to what the other people have to say. I like to go to classes in other states because I can visit with the assessors and everything in those classes from other states and find out what you're doing. I always find something to bring back to Livingston Parish that I can do better. Anytime that you stop learning and stop doing better, you need to hang it up. They always say, if your heart don't flutter when you see that big buck come out, then it's time to stop hunting. If you don't see ways to excite your base and get your people out at your office and everything going, and we got something new that we can really turn people onto, and it's going to help them, then it's time. It excites me every time. And people ask me all the time, are you running again in 23? Absolutely, I'm running because I've still got things that I am improving the office. I am making the office better. I am happy with the things that we're bringing in. And you're going to see some things that I'm going to bring back from Boston. I'm not going to talk about them yet, but I've got a few ideas that I brought back from Boston.
And there's a political announcement for you guys. Obviously, he just said he will be running again in 2023. Going to be a packed ballot next year. So, sir, if you'll introduce yourself real quick as we head on out.
Okay, again, Jeff Taylor, Livingston Parish Assessor. Thank you so much for the Denham Springs News for all the support you've ever given our Assess the Need program, and you personally, sir, for the support you've given me. I appreciate it more than you know.
Absolutely, and we appreciate you taking the time this morning to stop by and talk to us. Of course, Mr. David Gray will be there tonight for the Board of Review, so please be looking for those numbers on Facebook as he publishes that story. Please remember the news is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. One last time, we appreciate this gentleman, Assessor Jeff Taylor, for joining us this morning. We appreciate his program, Assess the Need, and all the other things we talked about today. We appreciate you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time.